Anima Squad is one of the main verticals in Set 14 Cyber City. With its many variations and how wide you can play around the line, it should be one of the comps in any player's arsenal, and one that I have found myself playing around quite a lot. My name is Boris, and today I will provide you with a short guide on Anima Squad vertical in Set 14 Cyber City. Throughout my PvE testing, I have played around 100 games in total, and feel like I have gained a good grasp on the line and different situations you might find yourself in when playing. I will begin by shortly summarizing the trait and the units in it. Then I will talk about different conditions and openers we're looking for to play the trait and the vertical. And I will finish up by providing different variations the comp might end up being capped at, as well as some other lines you might end up pivoting into. The vertical is composed of 8 units in total. In the 1 cost pool, we have Seraphine and Silas, Seraphine being your AP carry, the great Shojin user in the early game, and Silas being your bruisery tank that can also do a decent chunk of damage and has its own hero augment variation. But from 2 costs, we have Ilaoi and Vayne, Ilaoi being an incredible early game tank with a self-heal, and Vayne being your Rage Blade user from the 2 cost pool, and her ability does chunks the target 3 times for true damage. From the 3 costs we only have Yumi, which is a blue buff user, and there have been some variations playing around its reroll line. The 4 costs, which are Mother and Butter, would be Xayah and Leona. Xayah being the AD marksman unit with the burst type of spell, and Leona providing the comp with that AoE stun. And from the 5 cost to cap the board up, we have Aurora, which has a unique ability this set with being ability to summon a unit from the bench on the board instead of her while she keeps on fighting. The trait itself has 4 different breakpoints. We have a breakpoint at 3, 5, 7 and the prismatic breakpoint at 10. Each of these breakpoints our units gain some armor and magic resist as well as damage amp, and we get to choose from a weapon from the Anima Squad arsenal. Now let's take a look at the weapons we might be offered. The Anima Squad arsenal is composed of both physical and magic damage type weapons. The damage of these weapons scales from the star level of the Anima Squad units. Also, while there are 3 weapons at each of the breakpoints except from the prismatic one, we only get offered 2 choices from which we need to pick one, meaning that not always you will be offered a magic damage option. Also, most of these weapons share similarity where they become more effective the worse or the more clumping is done by your opponents in the lobby. So let's just go quickly through all the weapons. Except for the final prismatic tier, this is your instant win tier, just click anything, it will work. The Bladerang is a boomerang that does a good decent amount of damage to the first target and is reduced for the further ones. Uvu Blasters fire around a single target burst at one of the enemy units, and Guiding Hex is a 3 magic damage splash on the enemies. Also important to note that these weapons are always being casted by a random Anima Squad member. So there's no way you could really position to gain advantage, but you might roll the dice sometimes and it might work out great. At the 5 breakpoints we have antimines, which do physical area damage. I love them, they're my favorite because you just see some bombs being tossed at enemy units. For magic part, we have the Searing Bow, which does a nice AoE circle around the ground, which can clip some backliners and chunk them down. And we have a Vortex Glove, which shoots orbs all around the map that deal damage and look overall cool. At the 7 breakpoint, we have Gatling Bunny Guns. These are amazing against comps that are clumping, as they will just get shot down by a mini Misfortune ult. Tornadoes are the visual ones, just flying around Yasuo tornadoes from the middle of the map, also great at punishing enemies that are clumping. And lastly, the option is the Annihilator. This is great against tanks as it can provide another chunk, however I feel like the comp already has enough burst potential in it that you might want some of the backline access the other weapons offer. Now let's look at some of the openers and conditions we are looking for in order to play this line. The first common type of opener you will find yourself around is by playing around Seraphine as your primary Shojin item carrier, and Ilaoi or Silas, whichever if you find upgraded, which quite commonly will be Silas as your primary tank. We tag in Soshivana for by Techie for Seraphine and the nice little damage reduction. The reason why we're looking for is because the primary item, maybe even in the whole set, is Spear of Shojin. There's so many users for this item in the late game, and Saya is no exception. Her cast time, she's mana locked for very little, so she's absolutely can gain from this item and is better her than attack speed items. Second type of opener, what we might be, is playing around Vayne, especially if we get, for example, an early Jarvan from Loot Orb. Vayne is, as I mentioned, the Rageblade user, and an upgraded Vayne can definitely take you to fast 8. She will, with upgraded frontline, she's gonna be a beast on stage 3. And this is another theme that we will see as this comp does more damage from the weapons that are being procced at periodic intervals by the units. This is in some sense a stall comp. Hence, you always will want an upgraded frontline to play around. And the third type of opener we might find is the Yuumi opener, which is gonna be a little tricky because she's gonna be pretty much your 1-1 star, but if everything else is off, Yuumi is also a great Shojin holder, and you might tag in some amp and strategist units, and that actually becomes a very strong board. So I would play more this as in a tempo sense, which is another quite important thing in my opinion. This comp is best played from ahead. You want to play from tempo spots, you want to get to your fast 8 on 4-2, and then sacrifice some of that HP lead to be able to go 9. But now let's take a small look at the items, what we might be playing around and looking out for. As I mentioned, Shojin. You're going to see it here on 4 units. And even on Yuumi, even though she's the blue buff user, and even Vayne can carry it for you for that Zaya. If you can get 2 of these bad boys, it's great, and your tier economy is going to be tight, as well as your sword and gloves. If you're playing the main variation, if you're playing some of the reroll variations, you're going to be looking out for bows and rods around Vayne. And otherwise, you can have generic tank items tossed on Leona, Ilaoi, Silas in the early game. Any kind of, from the artifact side of point, any of the generic tank artifacts will be great. Zaya is gonna love some of that sniper's focus value, and while I have not tested her myself with Gold Collector, it could be good. However, I would not buy it. I'm sure there's a better user in this set that we've not found out yet. And from the caster side of things, if you're playing around the Seraphine reroll, I view this still as a set 10 Seraphine. Just build Shojin. It's mana item, she really wants that, then just damage items will be good. While on the augment side of things, we have 2 trait-specific augments. We have Power Leveling and Support Spire. Power Leveling is great to provide you with that econ that you'll need to get to your fast 8s and roll for the narrow pool of 2 specific 4 costs. And Support Spire is a great generic combat augment, introducing some of that rebel type of shenanigans we had last set, plus a shield sometimes, but you only get 1 effect from the random one. From command side of things, Pair of 4s in this comp slots in perfectly, since we have 2 4 costs, and as we'll see, we generally want to cap out the board with 5 costs. And if you're looking to play the Reroll 1 cast variation, no scout, no pivot can definitely go the way. Also, +1 emblem to unlock and toss onto another carry as the trait gives damage amp. is very good and also allows you to hit those breakpoints early. And otherwise, generic gold econ augments are going to be amazing. And also worth mention is that Silas has his own hero augment, and I will also show a couple of variations how you might want to play that. Now let's talk about the gameplay, what our game plan should be when playing the vertical. In general, this should be a fast 8 game plan. There are reroll variations, but those follow the generic rules of roll on level 5 for 1 costs, and for the 2 cost rerolls, if you're playing around Vayne and Alawi, just go to 6 on 3/2s through all to stabilize, and then to 3-star your units, push levels, then for either, if you find early, other Anima Squad units to fill out the trait, or other supporting traits and other 5 costs. Well, for the last 8 variation, we're looking to play around either Emblem or Econ Augment at 2-1. And then we would like to fill out with combat augments. In this set in general, you're going to be having so many resources that you're looking for 3 carry late game already by default. Hence, the item augments in this comp are not that great. And as mentioned before, we're generally looking to play this more as a kind of an Enforcer Rebel type of comp from last set, where we want to play around the win streak and tempo opener. However, lose streak options might still be possible, as you can theoretically cap your board on level 8 with an emblem, just you will be probably playing for 4th or 3rd. But from the generic fast 8 play point, go to level 6 on 3/2, slot in 5 anima, especially if you have the emblem, make sure your item carries are upgraded, and then go fast 8 on 4/2. Make sure you are stable on level 8 before going 9. Well, we do want that Aurora 2, another 2-star 5 cast to cap out our board. If without upgraded frontline and without upgraded Zaya, you might find yourself having a hard time going to 9. If you have a good HP lead, you will be able to do it, just don't pull a Soju and go level 9 and die next combat. So, let's look at some of the mid-game boards that we might want to be playing. This is one where we are level 7 already, but to fill out the level 4 or 6 variation, we can drop one of the frontline units, or if we have an emblem, we can drop either Seraphine or Yumi or Vayne, depending on whichever we're using to carry your items. Here I've filled in more potential item slams you want to look out for. I am giving out a shout out to WoW, Protector's Vow here. This is going to be an amazing item on Leona, however your tier economy is tight, since Yumi can use all your rods and tiers, and it's going to be your upgraded carry as a 3 cost in stage 4. So, while WoW isn't possibly Leon Abyss, just keep in mind for carousels in late game, prioritize first your carry and tank items and other sets. Another board that I do want to give out a shout out to if you have the emblem is the Jhin carry board. Jhin is one of the best flex units to have in your comp here, because it's going to be providing you with both marksman and dynamo, or Zaya and Aurora respectively. And he's probably the best Zaya item holder from 2 cost pool, since he's amazing with Shojin and loves the IE Last Whisper. And you can tech in Mord to provide with upgraded Seraphine, holding those AP items until you find upgraded Yumi, and Mordekaiser as potential tag and extra tank. Now, if you are playing the reroll variation, let's say around No Scout No Pivot, Superstars, or the Silas Hero Augment, as mentioned, we either roll on level 5 or 6, depending on around which units we're playing around for. If we have a Rage Blade, we play around Vayne. If we have AP items, Seraphine or Silas. In general, only Silas 3-star might not be enough of a carry in the late game unless you find that Leona 2 really early on, so I would sometimes stay chasing that Alawi 3 as my primary tank, even when playing around Seraphine. And for also Silas Hero Augments, here I've provided some of the generic items you might want to toss on them, which would be BT, Archangels, and JG. That's the standard but we might optimize this further as the set goes on. Here's another variation that you might find yourself playing around in the Silas Hero Augment scenario. But this would be the 6 Vanguard line paired up with 2 backline marksmen. This is more along the lines of the Marksman Vanguard line that I will also mention as a possibility to pivot into from playing this comp. But still tagging Anima Squad, so technically we count it here. Now, let's look at some of the main variations of how we could cap our board as we head into the late game. The first would be the standard fast 8, 7 anima vertical. With here in the capped version, we will have our Nexton being the emblem carrier, and we toss in, as previously mentioned, that Jin. However, with only 1 star in Nexton, I have found this to not be as stable, and you might want to look out for some of the other units. And also you're rolling really narrow, so that's why you might stay on level 8, with narrow meaning you're only rolling for Leona and Zaya. And here I provide some of the other units you might want to look to play out around. If you have some of the AP items, you could look around, play around Brand or Ziggs as your item holders, and if you have emblems, you toss these on them. Also, from the Marksman AD side of things, we have Aphelios, leading back to that Vanguard Marksman board that is going to be extremely popular this set, I'm sure, throughout the whole set. If we have some of the melee item carries, or we just had some for tempo, we could look around to pair the Slayers and play with Zed. And from frontline side of things, we could toss in Nico or Sejuani that are really crucial in this scenarios where Leona is contested, as this comp really needs a solid frontline, being a front to back comp really, as long the backline access is limited to your Anima Squad weapons really, and some splash damage. Make sure you find upgraded frontline units on level 8, otherwise you're gonna have a rough time. Now, one of the more interesting variations I found myself playing around was the strategist variation of the comp, which was for the scenarios when I could not hit Zaya, but I rolled a Samira. Then she's great item holder and she uses those Zaya items quite good, also Shojin, but again, in case the Marksman Vanguard variation is contested and you just cannot find a Zaya, keep in mind that you have player on Samira or some of the other units I mentioned before. When making your slot level going fast 8, you might have to be quite flexible around what you play around, and also when doing your roll down, you might want to flex around what units you hit. For example, if you have a rage bait build for Vayne and you find Ares, hey, you might want to play around Vanguard or Bastion Zeri. So some of the main comps that you might pivot into are Marksman Vanguard, Strategist Amp, Techies, Slayer Vanguard, or Bastion Zeri. You might be led through these choices with some of the other augment choices as well, but make sure that you have enough gold to actually hit the board and you don't find yourself in the middle of nothing. Let's look at some of these variations. Marksman Vanguard is the standard 4/4 comp with your Rageblade holder being Aphelios. Zaya uses the same items in a sense as in this previous comp, at least until we optimize it. And you have a Gunblade just keeping your Leona and Jarvan alive. Again, this comp strives of having great frontline and breaking the enemy frontline before yours breaks. And also, a shout out here in this comp goes out to Even Shroud, as you have two AD carries online. Building that Last Whisper is not going to have as high of a value, and you can use that bow and glove for proper damage items. The Strategist Amp is possibly one of the higher cap boards this set, but it's extremely expensive. I would play this from if I'm just slamming tempo items with some econ kind of opener, and you just get to go to 8 and 9 and cap this board out really high. And then we have the Techies, which you would usually want to play around if you get offered a Techie emblem, which could happen if you slot in the Shyvana for the Seraphine earlier, or have a Mordekaiser, you could look to pivot into this if you have lots of AP items instead of having Zaya items. And there's also the Slayer Vayne Vanguard variation, which currently, with the state of Zed, that's when it's good, it can be very good. And also Vayne is a great user of the category 5 augment. Can be some good fun had with this. Here essentially you're playing around also an upgrade that 3-star Jarvan as your frontline, just being infinitely healed from the Vayne, Skate going infinite. And the Bastion Zeri comp. This one will be a lot harder to pivot into, as you're only keeping Alawi from your original board in the cap state. However, if you get just toss these units, or you might have found yourself playing around Bastion frontline in the mid game, and around for a Rageblade, then she follows the same concept of going infinite from healing. And there you have it. The main gimmick of the trait is playing around different weapons from the Swarm main mode. In general, we're looking for either an emblem or an econ op opener augment, or something that might lead us to playing around one of the reroll variations. When we do go fast 8, we wish to stabilize around upgraded frontline and backline carry before going to 9. When we go to 9, we wish to cap around upgraded 5 costs and other strong units. I hope you enjoyed, and now that you've learned all about the comp, you can see me putting this knowledge in action in this video.